Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be breaking down exactly how we made last year's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and in general just the fourth quarter such a wild success for most of our clients. But I just want to share some proof and then I talk about exactly what we're doing this year, in relation to that. Of course, there's been their own respective changes. There's been some platform shifts, so our strategies are a bit different, but I want to walk through some of the more core elements on what we're actually going to be sticking with and making sure we're implementing once again. And of course, what elements and factors we're considering and testing on a daily basis as you go into this season of the year, as it's super important. This is kind of the time when you should be checking your ad accounts 2 and 3 times per day and staying on top of everything and making sure you're optimizing the right things as data comes in. So just to show you that what you're seeing here is real, I have a quick little video just to show you. This is me in the dashboard on my phone, so yes, this is all real. We boosted the conversion rate and we upped the actual revenue, as you can see, by over 54% increase to generate 1.2 million plus just in the fourth quarter alone last year. So definitely excited to see where it goes this year as we've helped them grow since. But anyway, I can't make that case study till next year. So getting into it, like I said, there's been a lot of constant updates. There's been platform shifts. As you may know, TikTok is huge right now. UGC is one of the biggest components of the success of your ads, and of course, big data tracking. And I'll jump into all that in a second. Definitely, what I would say allowed us to have this success was being both adaptive and malleable, and that's what I mentioned in kind of understanding based on what the data showed us, what should we be changing and how should we be kind of shifting our decision making and even our strategies just in general and where we were kind of pushing certain factors of the funnels and that omnidirectional shift. But anyway, so in this breakdown, I'm just going to talk primarily on the core strategies that were wildly successful last year that we're going to be doing the same thing for this year. And just here's another one showing a bit of the core part of the month, not even going to the actual holidays in December, but just more so to show that range that really showed Black Friday, Cyber Monday, where we were able to literally up their success in comparison to last year. So definitely awesome. So they are a home decor accessory brand type of person. When we stepped into their TikTok, it was brand new. So as you may know, TikTok, when you prime the pixels, it takes quite a bit in comparison to something like Facebook and Instagram, where priming the pixel is something that can happen in the span of a week, at most, honestly. Whereas on TikTok, it can take a little bit longer, several weeks, and typically a lot more money is more so where it comes from, not just like dropping $1 a day for a month or something like that. Whereas on the other side, we had already been running their Facebook and Instagram ads and their Google, so the accounts were aged and ready to go and already at a good scale. The blended ROAS in all of this was actually 5.71, so pretty incredible considering typically in these sections of the year, you're going to be blasting top of funnel because what you're really doing with some of these big deals is pushing top of funnel awareness as aggressively as you can. So it's really always super exciting when the biggest parts of your year and the largest parts of revenue are also wildly profitable in terms of your ROAS. So as you saw, the revenue in general from the paid ad side was actually $648,000, and the total revenue of the quarter was 1.2 million plus. And you can just see them here, so I won't say the exact values. Anyway, so in our general strategy, so you have an understanding of what were we even getting this success from. It was through TikTok as the primary channel for top of funnel. We also used Facebook and Instagram for top of funnel awareness as well. Lots of UGC content everywhere. Then we also have a lot of retargeting that comes into play at the middle of funnel and bottom of funnel, especially on Google, but also on Facebook and Instagram. You're going to have a lot of retargeting there as well. Lots of dynamics, lots of segmentation with the data, and we'll dive into all that in a second. But that's the gist of it. That was mainly more or less what our funnel looked like. The things that you see external to just paid ads is going to be they had a really good site with good optimization. As you saw, the conversion rate, although it went up a little, it was already pretty healthy. And they were running good email and SMS campaigns, of course, so when we drove more people into the ecosystem, they were that much more likely to buy because they were going to be reached anyway. So what we did in this current advertising climate, there's 2 big factors of the campaign that reign, most important beyond just, having incredible ad strategies. You could have the best strategies in the world, but if you don't have the data and you don't have good creatives, then they're just not going to succeed, and that's just how it is. So, I kind of mentioned that here. When your creatives are low quality, and no strategist can help you, because even if you put yourself right in front of the ideal people, if it's terrible, then they're just not going to convert. So that's a super important part. And I'll dive into exactly what we were doing to get high quality creatives and what we're doing this year as well. But likewise, if you can't track what's working and what isn't, and you don't have the data to make those iterative decisions on what to improve, what to stop, and what to scale, then you won't make much progress. So if your ROAS starts at 1 or it starts at 2, it's either not going to change or it's going to go down, which is unfortunate. So I will also touch base on that. So first off, creatives. Like we said, running them on a number of platforms. So you definitely need a big creative range. Of course, when you start, you can start by testing a lot of the same creatives on like Facebook and Instagram as you are on TikTok, assuming that they're all, short form video style. On TikTok, I really don't recommend jumping into it unless you have a nice range of UGC. So what we do for our clients is we actually source all the creators, write all the scripts, we do the editing, we do everything, and we find their best sellers, of course, and find their ideal demographics when we're sourcing the creators. We build out around 5 to 10 fully storyboarded, videos with around 10 to 30 variations per storyboard, and that gives us a ton of variation tests. So you can see what works, you can see what doesn't work, and then each month going forward, you can, improve in iterations where you expand on what works well, and you, of course, don't make more of what doesn't convert well. One of the biggest things that you need to keep in mind, and I'll mention this again in this video, but especially on TikTok, but on Instagram and Facebook as well in this current climate, is ads fatigue very quickly. In this current climate. So if you don't have very similar types to test and find what works best when you're scaling aggressively, and you don't, squeeze every penny out of it, you'll be missing out on a lot of revenue. So what I mean by that is, we would find 2 to 5 winning TikTok ads ideally in a month. And then, like I mentioned, we would have 10 to 30 variations of whatever was working well. So we could constantly test all the different hooks. We can make compilations of them. We could test different call to actions. We could test all the different things in the middle of the videos, different shots, different cuts, all of those things. We could test different copy. If it was on more Instagram and Facebook, there's not much copy on TikTok. Same with the actual written call to actions. There's a number of things you can test. And the most important part is when you find what's winning, that you go 110% down that route and you find exactly what's winning. You can find things that perform even better than what's performing well once you start testing those variations. That's going to be so important. So don't just get, one single UGC video with no variations and then expect it to be a winning ad. It's going to die in probably 1-2 weeks if it is a winning ad, because you won't have anything else to test once you find it in the winning audience that works well with it, or you find the winning copy depending on the platform, whatever it may be. So it's something that's really important to keep in mind, and undoubtedly something that got us, to be able to get these case studies, because without it, we wouldn't have been able to push as aggressively as we did while maintaining such a positive ROAS on places like TikTok, because we wouldn't have been able to do it. And then none of those people would have been in the funnel or in the ecosystem to be retargeted back on Facebook and Google and Instagram. So, keep that in mind as we move forward. So yeah, I know I mentioned UGC. In general, TikTok focuses very heavily. I mean, if you've been on TikTok, you know it. It's what performs well is going to be those super quick cuts. So, the shots shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 seconds long. You should be cutting to something else. Even if you're talking over it and it's one, basically static story, you should just constantly be feeding the people's brains, the minds, to have a lot of change, a lot of activity. And you should basically be doing all the thinking for them, both visually and through audio. So what we do, the only thing our agency makes in terms of content is UGC, just because statistically speaking, it's the highest converting form of creatives. So there's really no reason to allocate a lot of your spend in other places if you're going to be putting spend with the intent of just driving higher conversions. So that's what we do. Like I said, we source all the creators, we do all the script writing, the copy, the editing, all that stuff. And we do all the managerial work. So super helpful, but that's kind of how we get that quality content for our clients. But yeah, so we only focus on UGC, and we'll use that on literally TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and even YouTube Shorts. It's like wherever it can go, why not? So then on Facebook, that's where you can have some statics, and we do. I would say more so at the middle and bottom of funnels, where you can start to get some of those, where it's like more deal update driven. So when you're really retargeting people heavily, you can say more things like a great static image or a great video in general, like a product shot. and inform them. In this particular case, we were informing them of the Black Friday sales, the deals. It was like, buy one, get one 25% off, or 20% off store-wide kind of thing. So you have to consider, what are you actually pushing? And so it's more about reaching them when they already know your brand, when you're hitting them at those levels of the funnel. Whereas at the top of the funnel, and even at the kind of the top of the middle of the funnel, where you still have that like awareness driven tactic and strategy in mind, you're just really informing people who's the brand, like who are you guys, what do you sell, what's so special about you, and how are you going to convince them that you are unique in comparison to everyone else in your industry. And typically the best way to position that is to either go through, testimonials, case studies, take comedy rounds, whatever it may be, but showing someone else doing it instead of just professional product shots is why at that higher level, the higher stages of the funnel, having other people speaking on behalf of your brand and using it the way you need it to be used is going to be so powerful. So that's something to keep in mind, and just understand that there were some statics and some more professional shot styles as well, but they were typically more update, retargeting driven, things like that. And then lastly, Google. Google's just going to be static for Google shopping images, and then you're going to have basically Google AdWords, which is just like an SEO contest where you're just targeting different AdWords and keywords in general. So not as media driven, but great for retargeting, because so many times you can track some of these people's like customer life cycle and see them that they're actually, seeing your ad on TikTok or Google, or Facebook and Instagram. And then they go search it for the reliability. They'll search you on Google or something, even on their phones. And then you'll get them with the retargeting there, because they're searching something like it. It may be a branded search, maybe something else. And that's kind of where we're capitalizing on that. And we're just reaching them one more time at the bottom of the funnel once we've warmed them up so they don't go buy someone else's product. In this case, another home, decoration for what it was. In terms of actually building out those creatives, so, at this point, like, understanding what wins and what doesn't on each platform. We've sifted through literally thousands of creatives on each of these, seeing what wins on Facebook, what wins on Instagram, what wins on TikTok, even YouTube, like I mentioned, Google, of course, and just we now literally create our own ads and organic content for our clients, just because one of the biggest bottlenecks was not having high enough quality content where the strategies just weren't going to push them to the top. So we just started making them. Because oftentimes the clients have incredible products, they're just not displaying how incredible they are to their audience. So we took that in mind, and so that's why we do that. I already really spoke on that, so I won't go too heavily into it, but just keep that in mind. It's really important in this day and age. So yeah, I'll just go through this. In terms of properly tracking, we'll just... I always find this to be funny. It's always funny to explain just because I'm so heavily invested in marketing now, but while it's a bit unconventional, I actually come from a background, I have a master's in data science and chemical engineering. And so this topic is definitely, when I came into it, it was my strong point, where I was just thinking of things extremely analytically. So when I would look at campaigns, I was always just considering how could I analyze them from, a data-driven standpoint, and a perspective where I could just iteratively improve on the data that I could track. But one of the biggest problems was there just wasn't enough to track. So I couldn't make a lot of good decisions, and I felt very uninformed when I was trying to, improve myself and improve the campaigns every day. So since then, as a team, we've grown to find solutions that work well for us. And I'm just going to mention some of the things that I really, really recommend having in place. As I wouldn't say the bare minimum. There's definitely a little bit less you could do if you really don't want to invest into things just yet. But these are really good to keep in mind. So first off, this is a must. If you're going to start on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, anything like that, make sure your pixels are properly set up. I mentioned TikTok takes a lot of priming, so start spending, even if it's really cheap awareness or something like that. It should be running for a month, unless you're going to put a lot of money into it. Then it could go faster, but definitely have to prime that pixel. But in general, have your pixel set up. If it's through Shopify, it's like an easy integration. They'll give you tutorials, whatever you need. Next is going to be Google Analytics. So you don't have to use Google Ads to use Google Analytics. You can just have that as an analytics platform, like a tertiary platform that you work alongside. So if it's through Shopify or some other CMS, you can just hook them up, integrate them, and it's really, really helpful. Because more so what it's considering is also your organic Google-driven traffic, where Google has some reign over tracking the data there, and they'll just relay that kind of stuff. So it gives you a lot of search insight in general, not just Google Ads. I also mentioned GTMs, which is Google Tags. They're going to be really important if you're running Google Ads. That'll be when it's the most powerful, really. And that just helps. It's kind of like its own form of basically they sort of act like UTMs where they track things on the end tag so they can try and more accurately allocate the, intent of the customer and understand where they came from and where they went, like in terms of product pages versus, where did they, and their source of how did they get into your ecosystem, things like that. So can be helpful. In addition to that, so this is where it's sort of additional, but I really do recommend it if you're going to step into it. I will recommend a third-party ad side tracking system. So this is something that just tries to optimize the actual tracking of data from your literal ads. So it's tracking things from your ads and where those go. So we typically use Triple Whale. There's other solutions. Can't think of all of them right now. I think it's Cometly, there's Hyros, there's a couple others that also try and do the same thing. And basically what they're doing is they're sticking onto your ads, so you're integrating it to your systems, as like I said, between Shopify and Facebook or something like that. And they will try and just accordingly track your information to get a better idea of the cycle. So they'll try and better track the actual customer clicking through everything to just more appropriately understand where people are coming from and if they actually purchased, things like that. So keep that in mind. So this is the big one. This is something that we personally have had to invest in as an agency and completely built out ourselves. I'm an advocate of this. It's called store-side data resolution systems. So we literally manage our own database of over like 1 trillion data points at this point, where we do exactly this. So it'll be like a pixel on your store side. Basically, it's like a line of code. And rather than trying to run through the browser or some other like third-party funnel, what we actually do is we use that first-party data. So when someone lands in your store, we use that, like the actual action of them landing, the pixel fires, and it goes back to our own dynamically enriched database to try and track exactly what that information is, which makes retargeting and things like that so much more powerful. And it lets us make some incredible lookalike audiences where we get some of our crazy ROAS values. So super important. I can't assure that everyone has this, so it's sort of like a shameless plug to our own agency. But in general, it's just something to keep in mind where it's really good to look. There's probably other solutions out there. I don't really look into it. I know that we built our own, so it doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, those are some to keep in mind. If you don't have these sorted, then I like I said, I recommend just taking a look at these before you really jump into anything else. Then you can start looking at things like CDPs and programmatic-driven solutions and things like that. But that comes much later, and they're typically steep in terms of the investment side, so it's not worth considering early on. And then I mentioned the pixel priming, so keep that in mind, yep. So, all right, so audiences. In the beginning, we start broad on every channel. You always start broad. It's much easier in this current day and age to start extremely broad. Let your pixel start figuring out what's gonna work well. Let your ads start learning what's gonna work well with the audiences inside of it. And then once you have a general idea and you can start learning more about your demographics, you can start honing in on what performs well and trying to expand on those. But if you don't start broad, then you're going to miss out on a ton of potential revenue. Because currently with the restrictions and the lack of data, even with all these solutions, you're still going to have a lack of data in general just because of the discrepancies between different platforms and the lack of communication that's been created because of all these updates. So you're just going to miss out, and your platforms, your pixel and your ads are going to become biased and they're not going to check the right things, and you're just going to miss out on a ton of revenue and potential audiences. So always start broad. We typically start lower budgets, $25, $50 a day per creative, depending on how many creatives are starting and what our rough budget is, but absolutely. And so whenever we were launching new ads, we were doing the exact same thing. So that's what we're doing for this, quarter as well for this brand. One big thing is I always talk, as you heard from my background, I always think of things like a science experiment. So I am a big advocate for separating every single variable right off the bat so you know exactly what's working. So I always exemplify this by saying, like, if you're going to test 3 pieces of copy and 3 creatives, then you should test 1 creative with all 3 pieces of copy, the second creative with all 3 pieces of copy, the third creative with all 3 pieces of copy, like that, and have that understanding of what it is. So you'd get like 9 there. If you're going to test like different call to actions on top of that, you'd have 27 creatives per ad set. And then you could duplicate that one ad set where you're testing all of those different things, and you could change them and do different audiences, say. Like, that's how I always exemplify it. So when you see what's working in each ad set, you'll know. Or if an entire ad set is just performing well in comparison to all the others, you'll know it's the audience. You know what I mean? So it just separates every single variable, and while it can be a little intensive in the beginning, it makes scaling, that much easier because you know exactly what's working. So you know how to expand on what is working and what isn't, not like having 40 audiences stacked or something crazy, or not actually just randomly testing variables. So then you have to actually break all of them apart again and waste more money. So that is my opinion, and I definitely recommend it. In general, so I will dive into this. Let's see. So this is where I was mentioning that we typically duplicate a lot of those ad sets, and we can test all the different audiences and things like that in that separated form of variables, and that's what makes that so easy. What you need to do is just start aggregating a healthy amount of data, assuming your tracking set up and everything, so you're getting even more data quicker. It makes it easier to make these decisions fast. And that's where we start making these iterative updates and everything like that. As we get more data, so you need a certain amount of data points. You need around 1,000 events, typically on each platform, to make a real lookalike audience. So once we get to that point, we'll start testing lookalike audiences when we know what's working, and we can start building those out. That also allows us, in general, it means we're reaching a lot more people, and a lot more people are getting into our funnel and our ecosystem. So that's when we start integrating more heavier retargeting efforts. So that's where the middle of funnel and the bottom of funnel come into play, and all of that. And that's sort of when I would guess you could say also, like, for this particular client, that's when Google kicks in, and that's when the bottom of the funnel on Facebook kicks in. Other than that, like, until we got to that point and we didn't have that like cross-channel retargeting going, we were primarily testing and horizontally scaling on TikTok and on Facebook and Instagram. Here's where I mentioned it. Lookalike audiences, you need at least 1,000 events, so keep that in mind. I also mention it like this because if you may be able to just make one depending on how established you are, like right now. But if you are not and you're really just jumping into ads, then keep in mind that you have to spend aggressively enough to be able to make that just by aggregating enough data. Whereas some brands, some clients, we just launch campaigns and they're already in a position where they have so much data that we can make it literally on the first day that we're starting. So, on the first week of the campaign, like for example with them, we'd already been, stepping in and warming them up. So on the first weeks of the campaign, we're already ready to launch lookalike audiences. So TikTok and Facebook have different forms of lookalike audiences and how you can actually build them out. So I'm not going to go extensively through them, but this is sort of what we were doing. I'll just put them together. So this is TikTok's, where you can do it like this. You can't really go into random specifics yet. It's still, a young platform, and they're still building out a lot of that. So you can't go crazy, but this is kind of how I would recommend going about it, just to kind of catch them in general. So you start with broad, you go balanced, you have narrow. Again, you don't have a lot of options. So this is kind of just picking the different segregated forms of data and how you can kind of break them up. And then you can go for iOS and Android, just because they're tracked so differently that the results can be very different. So it's worth kind of tracking them separately. And then over on Facebook, we have a number of types we can do. And it's typically going to be things like, this is just retargeting general traffic that has done certain actions in the last 180 days. I guess I should have said these as well. And then these will be more so within those ranges, catching people that have had high view times on the content you've put out. So as you can see, we're pretty focused on videos, which is why we're even considering that. But also you can think about just the general website visitors that were able to be tracked. Again, that's where that first party data tool I mentioned that we have is super helpful, because this gives us a ton more data to target. And then you can just look at any customer lists and make lookalike audiences as well as literally the actual customers. So that can be really helpful. Especially if you have like big email or SMS lists, you can literally retarget them. And then you can also use those types of people that were most likely to join your community, your ecosystem, or make purchases, and make entire audiences out of them that are very similar to them based on machine learning regression models. So worth mentioning, so just about all of these, you need to pick the range of how like far or near in similarity you're going to be doing this, because essentially what this is a machine learning model taking the points, a ton of different data points per person, so the type of behavior patterns and all the things that they do, and then they run something called a regression model to find everyone that's super similar to them with a certain extent. So you need to consider that when you're building a lookalike audience. So we typically use two types. We use 1%, and then we use 1% to 5%. So that's the range of like differentiation and variation between the audience you literally have and the lookalike audience you're creating from them. This is, of course, something you can test for yourself. It's not something that we hold every single time consistent, but this is definitely what we did for this client, so keep that in mind. What's important here is that you segment the behaviors of your audiences and just begin getting to a point where you can start feeding them content based on their actions. This is going to make it a lot easier to understand, are you dynamically retargeting people that had an add to cart and abandoned? Are you, targeting people that have already purchased and you're trying to get them back in the funnel for the special this holiday? What's the point? What are you trying to reach them with? What do they need? Do they need a testimonial? Do they need one more deal to just push them over the edge? What's the purpose? So also keep that in mind going forward, that like in each of these, you can start thinking about what creatives and what copy you should be reaching them with. Now, in terms of scaling, so, we're at a point where you should be getting some success or seeing something that's performing well. And if not, then you should keep testing sort of horizontally and getting more of that test just to understand what's going to work and what isn't. But it's important to take it slow in the beginning for a couple of reasons. So I said, one, you don't want your ad accounts to get unnecessarily flagged for excess spend and volatility, especially in like any sort of Black Friday or Cyber Monday season, because that would be the worst if you were restricted literally on one of the biggest days of the year. So keep that in mind. You don't want to go crazy, one day off and just like go insane after spending almost nothing for the past 3 months, because you will likely get flagged for doing something crazy. The next thing is going to be, it's also just important not to spend too heavily into any one ad once you see a little bit of success, because you may be very likely to just expend it in some sort of ad fatigue. So this may be due to a lack of audience. This just may be because the ad actually wasn't incredible, but it was just performing well because it was converting at a very low ad spend. So as soon as you dump money into it too aggressively, you're actually just going to waste a ton of money making no conversions, things like that. So it's just good to take slow at first and try and ramp it up. And that's why I recommend starting these things early. So we even have some of our people starting, at the 5th of November, the 7th, the 10th, like getting very ahead of the game with some of their Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals, just because it lets us get all the ads, reviewed, confirmed, start scaling, and we don't have to worry about like, oh, we have to 10x the investment on what they should be spending daily, because then you'd be pretty much setting yourself up to get in trouble. Now, like I said, we start spending daily 20% to 30% every few days, where we'll start increasing it as it succeeds. On TikTok, there are minimums. So if you're at a very low ad spend, I think the minimum is like $10 per day. So sometimes 20 and 30% is less than 10. So, you just have to go up by $10. But on Facebook, that's not really a problem, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, when the success holds and everything's well, then you can start aggressively scaling the budget and keep moving forward with it, because that means it's okay. Something to consider, and it's not worth diving into too much if you're unfamiliar with the ads or you don't have someone else who's really talented at it running it for you, but do keep in mind cost caps, because this can get really helpful if you use it correctly, but it also can be a bit dangerous if you don't. So, just keep that in mind. I recommend testing it. There's no like one size fits all approach. There's a few ways you can go about it that are typically going to be the most effective. If you ever need help with that, you can shoot me a message and we can talk about it, but just keep that in mind. Sometimes our campaigns need data, from less optimal ad sets, so that's why we say it can get a bit complicated, and we don't always have the exact same type of thing depending on the in general purpose of the campaign. So yeah, I would just leave it alone in the early stages. Completing the funnel, though, it would not be valuable, obviously, all of this work, if I didn't mention the actual overarching retargeting strategy. So I mentioned that a lot of it is going to be on Google and on Facebook and Instagram. And, we even have some on TikTok, of course. There's no point just making one without a funnel when you're just, missing it on free sales. But on TikTok, a majority of our effort was pretty much getting incredible creatives, proper tracking, and then just scaling using our proven ad strategies. Like, that was it. On Facebook and Instagram and Google, we leveraged this to integrate the retargeting campaigns with the focus that we knew we were basically just going for retargeting at middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. So anyone who interacted, anyone who got involved in the ecosystem, they clicked, they joined, they went on the site, they subscribed, whatever it may have been, they liked it, they followed your socials, now we're reaching out to them. They know who your brand is, so now you're just updating them with all the incredible things you're doing now that they know who you are. I would say when we go about these, like with a lot of Facebook and Instagram, it's really going to be about leveraging the data to guide your audience through the customer journey, meaning that, you know, your creatives and copy should be changing as you go. So I mentioned that earlier as well, that once you start, you know, segmenting out your data, what you really need to consider is what stage of the cycle and of the customer life cycle are they at? And so what do you need to reach them with? Like I said, you know, at the top of funnel, it should be kind of educational, informational. Like, even if it's not literally informational or it's like educating them on a literal topic, it should be, hey, this is my brand. This is basically, if they're at top of funnel and they're being reached by your ad, it's the first time they're literally ever seeing you online. Even if they knew you, like even if it was Nike and it was just a cold ad reaches this person for Nike and they already know them because they've seen them at sporting goods stores, it's the first time they've been seen online. So maybe now they'll interact if they like it, but next they've interacted, and that's when they're in the middle of funnel and the bottom of funnel. Like, they're considered warm. They've done enough that they're not being reached for the first time, or when they're being reached, they've interacted. So that's kind of how I say that. And I more so say because then when you get to the middle of funnel, it can be update driven, it can be testimonial driven, it can be any of those things that you want them to see about it. It can be the special, it can be the discount, it can be like releasing new collections, it can be getting them in for specials. You know, that's where I say like all of those types of things come into play. Now, I also say that in a way that, you know, testimonials can be educational and informational. So we use those at top of funnels as well, but oftentimes we'll shift things like copy if it's still going to be the same type of testimonial or something like that, because, you know, we need them to be reading a different type of, you know, format, a different piece of copy, because the purpose is different. Our purpose is now to convert them. They are involved. They've gone this far. The purpose is to make them buy now. They're involved already. And the same goes for bottom of funnel, where we're just kind of pushing them over the edge. Oftentimes it's like dynamic retargeting for all the people who have added something in the cart and didn't follow through or something like that. Or like I said, it'll be very special driven, where you're going to give like your biggest discounts, your biggest specials, and your biggest updates to your bottom of funnel and your returning customers, because those are the people that literally just need a tiny push, a little bit of a special, and you get the sale. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, I mentioned that here as well, so if you get the chance to look through the doc, you'll see all this anyway. And then, of course, with Google, that's where I mentioned you're going to have a lot of branded search. You're going to be filtering positive and negative keywords literally constantly, especially in these months. Like I said, you're going to be checking them like 3 times a day. And you're just going to have to kind of rely on a couple like types of campaigns. So you're going to have Google Shopping campaigns are going to be important, your standard AdWords, and then a lot of like Performance Max and dynamic retargeting campaigns are going to be probably the most advantageous that I'd recommend, especially at this time. But in general, at that bottom of funnel, that's just really what you kind of want to have a spread on. So yeah, I mean, that's really it. We've talked about a lot of the segmenting, a lot of the lookalike audience structure. I didn't really talk about how much you could scale the bottom of funnel and the middle of funnel. I have a couple other resources where I go into the exact type of segmentation I do for each of the platforms. So if that's something you're interested in, you know, feel free to reach out to me and I can send you over some documents or resources. Or if you just want to hop on a call and talk more about exactly how we do that and how we build out these campaigns and, you know, with an omnidirectional intent where we have you on multiple channels, happy to do that as well. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. Here's another piece of proof where we did this. I showed you that in the video already. And then here's another store we helped last year where we made them go up by literally 4,000%. So another big one where we helped them really step into the game and start scaling aggressively. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions or you want to hop on a call and see how we can do this for your brand, let me know. We can do. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. So today I'm going to quickly be going over the 3 core pillars you need to scale to multiple 6 and multiple 7 figures per month on a consistent and reliable basis. We work with numerous e-commerce brands to help do exactly this using these 3 core pillars. And I'm going to be showing a couple case studies so you can get some real proof of live dashboards and understand that we truly are doing this on a monthly and daily basis. But before I do, I just want to quickly walk through exactly what these pillars are so you can get a better idea. If this is something that you are interested in or you could use and you're interested in growing more predictably, swiftly, and reliably, then definitely check out this video because like I said, I'm going to be breaking down everything we do from start to finish, A to Z, on exactly how we do it. So here we go. I'm going to hop in a couple dashboards. First off here, we started working with this brand in the fourth quarter of last year, right before Black Friday, and we've been able to help them grow ever since. We've been consistently and reliably scaling them. We've helped even increase their conversion rate, as you can see here. We've helped just about every part of these have been positive. We've helped more customers come back into the funnel. We've helped increase sessions in general, and the average order value, of course, is very important to increase. And in general, as you can see with the 54% increase in total sales, we've undoubtedly helped them grow. Similarly, we started working with this brand actually 3 months ago, so we're going right into the fourth quarter here in 2022. But we helped them. We actually took their Google ads from around a 0.3 ROAS when they came to us, and they're sitting at about a 3.7 or 3.8 ROAS. I don't have it up right now. But we've done the same where we've increased conversion rate, we've increased the retention of current customers, and of course the revenue. You can see as we're ramping into the last 30 days here, it's getting even more aggressively scaled up, so it's great as we're going straight into Black Friday. We haven't hit it yet, so I can only imagine how good it's going to be once we get into that. Just a little more proof here. You can see over here we have a campaign we just launched for another brand, and we're already hitting 18, 19 ROAS and 22 ROAS on a small amount that we've launched, even including top of funnel ads where the average is around 8.3. So super exciting and really incredible. It's always extremely exciting to see high ROAS values at the top of the funnel. You can see here on this brand, while we're still doing a lot of top of funnel testing with them, so there's a long way to go. You can see we've already gotten their ROAS sitting at about a 4.8. So of course we have a lot more testing, and we'll have that honed in pretty soon. But even on the launch in the first 7 days, in the first couple weeks here, we're already sitting at a 4.8 ROAS, literally on cold testing. So absolutely incredible. Then lastly, we have one where we're showing even at smaller budgets, we have a really good strategy in our 3 pillars that allow us to be very successful. Whether we're using $100,000 in ad spend, we're using $5,000 per day, or we're using something like $500 or $1,000 per month. We have strategies that consistently and reliably help you grow, and we work with you to make sure that whatever's on your brand side that you're leveraging properly. So even here at an ad spend of around $600, we're sitting at around a 4.26 ROAS, which is incredible. All right, so let's get into exactly how we're doing this. From a 30,000 foot overview, the answer is exactly this. So we are using 3 pillars to scale to multiple 7, multiple 8 figures, whatever it may be. And it's going to be predictable conversion-driven marketing, data optimization and tracking, and scalable content creation. And so when I say predictable conversion marketing, what I truly mean is that we do this a couple ways, but one of the biggest ways that we are always doing this is by running high quality paid ads on platforms like TikTok, Google, Facebook, and Instagram. What this means and where this comes into play in data tracking optimization is actually in that we help you not only run some of the highest quality ads with the best strategies in the market, we help you track more data so you can make decisions that much faster and make better decisions at each iteration. So when you get results, you're more informed and you know exactly what's working and what isn't and exactly how to move forward. The next thing is going to be one of the most important parts that comes into this. So you have the data, you know you have working ad strategies, but lastly, you need something to put in these ads, these creatives. And many times that we work with brands, they're working with low quality creatives where even if you were to use some of the best ad strategies you have, the results might be okay and mediocre at best, simply because, even with these strategies, what you're putting in front of your potential customer and your audiences in general is just not going to convert them. So the last part that we come in for is we help you typically through UGC style content. We source creators, we find them, we bring them together, we make high quality content, write the scripts, do all the video editing, everything in between. And we get you those high quality creatives that you need to put in front of them, to track more data, and to iteratively improve every single time. And those are without a doubt the 3 core pillars. Now, what actually goes into them is a little more in depth, and I'm going to lightly break down exactly what that is. But I want you to just have an understanding of that, that 30,000 foot overview of exactly what even is encompassed in our strategy. So if you were to work with us or you were to learn more, you would see that we've worked with quite a few clients and had some really great returns and generated a lot of revenue. But in general, our process goes like this. First up is diagnosis. This is kind of self-explanatory in its name, but in reality what it is us taking a little bit of a closer look, popping open the hood and digging deeper into the actual metrics, the back end. How is your conversion rate? How are things performing on the back end? What is your AOV? How does the store look? Landing pages, things like that. So we can understand where your bottlenecks and exactly what can we successfully leverage when we run your ads to know, okay, these are best sellers. These have the healthiest margins. This is what this looks like. This is how we can lower CPAs. This is how we can bundle upsells, things like that. So it's going to be really important to have an understanding. Not to mention, this will also give us some insight on some of the market research we need to know exactly where your audience is most likely to be, so we know what platforms we should jump into early on. And this kind of goes hand in hand, so I probably overlap some of what I said into strategic planning, but this is what I mean when I say we do a lot of that market research, and getting a good understanding of exactly where your brand is, how it's established, and what kind of metrics you have in its foundation is what we need to start building out exactly where we're going to go moving forward and how we're going to swiftly and predictably scale you via those 3 pillars. Next is going to be those digital foundations. So this is where we actually get to start building out things. This is where we can set up the data system, start compiling creatives that you may have already, seeing what's working and what isn't, so we can turn off what isn't working and already start expanding on what is. And this goes, for the actual creatives, the ad sets, the conversion rates on your store, maybe the landing pages, but also just like the actual strategies in general. If you already have some sort of working data system, maybe you're using a third-party data, maybe you have a CDP in place, maybe you have a first-party tracking third-party system, whatever it may be. These are things that we're going to need to check early on, get a good foundation, and see what we can move forward with and what we have to add in. Next is going to be that actual test phase. So this is where we start creating everything. This is where we start setting up the campaigns, starting to launch, and this will be what we call top of funnel awareness, which is simply the campaigns where we're reaching people that have never seen your brand before. We're going to be driving in new people into your funnel, into your brand's ecosystem, and finding how we can consistently reach them in a profitable way. Of course, we're not just doing this to blindly lose money. And that's where we kind of call this an epoch stage, and what that really means is just we quickly can use different iterations. We can quickly run a lot of tests because we get so much data back so easily that we know exactly what to do next time. We know within a couple days what's working, what isn't, what needs to be turned off, and what needs to be scaled up, and what to try next. So that's what makes this so powerful when you're working with additive media. The next stage is going to be verifying those benchmarks, and just to be clear, this is the last one down here. But verifying benchmarks is simply, we start to be able to define, based on the metrics you have and the results we start getting, what are our goals and what do we need to hit to get you to where your goals are? Because of course, when we come and we bring you into the team, one of the biggest priorities is understanding what are your goals, where do you need to go, and what's your vision for the brand? And what we do is we simply try to understand that and see what we need to do to bring you exactly to where your vision is. How can we help you scale to your goals? So defining those benchmarks once we have a better idea is going to be super important so we know exactly what we're aiming for. The last part is always going to be scaling. So we almost always do this within 30 days, if not 90 days, where we start getting you on track, profitable, building everything out. This actual process of getting all the testing going and launching all the campaigns happens within the first week. But getting it to a point where it's very scalable and predictable and profitable is something that can take, it's typically under 90 days. It's typically less. We can usually get it within 30 or 60, depending on how established you are as a brand and what you're already doing in terms of your digital marketing efforts. But for some that are totally brand new, like the one I mentioned back there, where we started with them in 3 months and their ROAS was 0.3, we were fortunate enough to get them positive within the first 30 days. But you can already see in the last 30 days of that, they're scaling so much more aggressively than they were in the first 30 and the first 60 days. So it just kind of gives you some context that, of course, it takes some time to get enough data aggregated to start making even more informed and better decisions every time. Not to mention the actual content buildup, finding your winning ads and scaling those while testing more and finding more winning ads. That kind of stuff is a long and in-depth process, but it's something that we're comfortable doing. And yeah, so just for context, that's typically around how long it takes to see a lot of success. But that's what the scaling phase is. Of course, that goes well beyond any 90-day or 60-day or whatever period it may be. But to get you to that point where you're starting to really successfully see that is typically going to be, like I said, 60 to 90 days. Of course, beyond just the case studies we've shown before, we have plenty of other proof showing this. This is one of our bigger clients we've worked with where we were actually able to help them. They're one of the many brands afflicted by iOS 14. They'd been struggling because of the lack of data. And obviously that's coming up again as soon the pixels will be removed and third-party data is being removed from Google and browsers. But we were able to help them actually shift their entire campaign strategy, because what was happening was their Facebook and their Google was starting to plummet just from a lack of data in general. We fixed it. We re-upgraded their data optimization systems. We launched a ton of new campaigns for awareness-driven focuses to get people in the funnel. And as you can see here, in literally under 7 days, with just around 75K in ad spend, we helped them generate $2.34 million, which was amazing. Of course, there was more beyond this. Let's just kind of show a screenshot of literally just within a week's time. This is what we could do for them. I should also mention this was a combination of ads on TikTok and Facebook and Google, so a lot of top of funnel that was still profitable, but of course not as incredible as this in terms of conversion value, was being run on those platforms, and the incredible highly targeted retargeting campaigns were here on Google that were performing very well. So this is what you see, the screenshot. We've had a similar kind of case study where we've done this, a very similar actually strategy with someone who is also struggling with iOS 14. And this is just the retargeting campaign. They performed really well on Facebook. They also had Google and they also had TikTok. This is like the type of strategies that we typically do. So we are a big fan of omnidirectional scaling. And we also are a big fan of just making sure that you exist on multiple platforms, so you're never too dependent on any one platform or any one source of revenue. So if there's ever any big updates or anything goes down or there's ever any problem or even an account restriction, heaven forbid, that you don't just have your sales and your entire business halted because of it. Anyway, I won't go through all of these, but we've done quite a bit in this space, and we've worked with a number of e-commerce brands. We work with 6-figure, 7-figure, and multiple 8-figure brands as of right now. So we're definitely comfortable with it. And so I appreciate you checking it out. If you're interested in seeing how this would look like for you, or you want to see some more case studies, you want some resources, and you want to try and just build out a more in-depth marketing plan of what that might look like in your business and how we would go about implementing those for you, then there'll be a link around this video. Be sure to book one in, and we'll be happy to chat with you, build out a full plan. Worst case scenario, we'll give you some resources to point you in the right direction. Best case, we can help each other and we can work together. So Hey, how's it going? So on this video, I just want to quickly break down a little bit more about a couple case studies showing you how we've actually leveraged organic content, and I'll be able to show you that just through a couple dashboards. And then 2, just a quick run through of the actual overview of the process of what it would look like to not only sign on to the agreement, but exactly what would happen once you get onboarded and what it's like working with Adamant Media. So of course, getting this out of the way, let's look at the case studies. So first off is this brand. I obviously can't say exactly who they are for NDAs, but I can show the live dashboard so you know they're legitimate. So I will just do this to make sure we're on the same page here. But in general, what it's going to be is you can see this is when we started working with them in February. And while they had some conversion rate problems because of a different traffic source they'd started using as well, where they're running ads on Facebook without us at the time, you can see here, if you go down to organic, you will see that 1, they didn't properly track their TikTok, which is much of the unknown. And that's why you can see as soon as they started working with us, it went up by 200%. But additionally, you can see the direct socials, which they were doing Instagram and Facebook as well. And that will be right here, where you can see a 43% increase on the social direct and the 200% increase on the incorrectly tracked TikTok. So definitely a great one where we're making organic content. Since then, we've also helped them increase on their ad spend. We're running a lot of TikTok and starting to fix their Facebook that I mentioned. So that's going to be that direct, but not directly related to the content creation. So yeah, definitely super exciting. Another one is going to be here. So I want to show you, this is them before working with us. So before working with us, they're sitting at about this. This is year to date. So this is just their overall, of course. And you can generally see that this is their general slope. And we started working together in August. So you can see the uptick there, which is great. So let me just pick the last 3 months because their actual 3-month was just ending yesterday. Fortunately, we're working together again, but yeah, so exactly 3 months. So you can see there's actually a 50% increase since what they were doing before. We've helped them not only increase their revenue, but also their conversion rate. And we've gotten quite a few sessions up. We've even helped them increase their average order value a bit. And you will see here, similarly, you will see the direct that's gone up in general. This is not going to be anything like that. And this is also because they completely don't check it right. Because you will see here on the social, if they had been tracking it correctly here, you would understand that a 291% increase in their social is a huge difference. And then we simply help them retarget these types of audiences on Google with ads. So it's like a small top of funnel awareness through a large reach by content creation. And then we simply retarget them on places like Google. So definitely super successful. You can definitely see the increase in general. And that's also why you'll see the increase in search, but that's a bit unrelated to the content creation side. So another awesome success story. In general, what we do is, I know it's a little bit of a mess to look at, but we start here. So in our creative process, the first thing that you'll do when you get onboarded is we'll go through the creative development stage. So this is really the only part that's a bit intensive on your end as a brand. And we will look at the iterative testing structure in creative development. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at your general brand. We're going to do an analysis, kind of do an entire brand audit, look at where your organic presence exists, even what your paid presence exists, what kind of successes you're seeing, where your audience really exists, what about your demographics, analyze your analytics right now, consider competitor success in the same space, and of course, start everything else. So what we'll be considering is things like platform selection. So when you want to make an aggressive attack into Reels versus TikTok versus YouTube Shorts, while of course short-form content can be used on all of them, and you can expect pretty good success from high-quality short-form content on all of them at once. Understanding exactly what platform you're speaking to can make a bit of a difference of exactly how it's structured. So that's usually something many clients typically want TikTok, some want Instagram, and now some are starting to look into YouTube Shorts as well. Again, if you make good quality content in general, they'll all be pretty successful, but knowing where you're most aggressively pushing is good to keep in mind. The next thing is going to be the content style. So we're going to look at things like exactly what resonates. Again, this comes sort of with market research and competitor research to understand what we should test first. And of course, this is also something that once we get some results, we can start to iteratively improve and understand what we should expand on, what we should turn off. So we can test things like testimonials, informationals, case studies, compilations, lifestyle, and a number of other things where we're doing things like there's, I can't think of the word right now. It's going to be like dialogue examples, and there's a number of other ones like stitches, things like that, which we can dive into. But it's all going to be about the style, like how should we actually present it. What goes hand in hand with content style is going to be the actual creative structure. So typically we're doing, short form videos, but are we actually doing like stitch styles? If you know the types of different videos on TikTok and things like that, are we doing collaborations? Are we doing, like I said, dialogues? Are we doing scenarios? Are we doing meme styles, statics, awareness, conversion driven? And understanding these types of things are going to be really powerful for letting us know exactly what type of content we should be storyboarding and scripting. And it also gives a lot of insight into what type of creators you're going to resource because they're going to have to make a certain type of video. Again, this is something that, after the first round or two, when you know what's really going to work well for your brand, this gets a lot easier. But at first, it's a bit of an uphill battle where we have to test very widely, learn exactly what your audience wants to see, and then continue to do more like that and do it even better. So anyway, that's creative development. That gets plugged in once we have all that figured out. We'll get a big onboarding form with you. We'll get a bunch of information. We'll have a kickoff call, get all that kind of sorted out. Then we'll look at creator sourcing. So that's where we sort of consider things like demographic and brand image. And I won't break down all of these sections here, but it's really just going to be considering things like, what languages do you need the creators to speak and their gender? What kind of qualities? Do they need to be living in a good house? Do they need to be eco-friendly? Should they have an electric car? Should they be married? Should they have pets? Things like that. Similarly, we need to understand, who we actually appealing to, because of course we don't just want to pick random people for these creatives. If your target demographic is, middle-aged women, then we should have a middle-aged woman presenting the product because we want it to resonate with your audience, things like that. The next thing is going to be, once we get all that sorted, we get all their information. They're already kind of in our network, so it's pretty easy to find them at the beginning, but we still, of course, have to gather that and centralize it for you. So we pass that over to you. We estimate the overall rates depending on those exact creators. finalize the scope of the project, relay all that information to you. We run it all by you to make sure your brand is going to be represented exactly how you want. Then we'll have the addresses handed to you. You can go ahead and ship the products to them. This is why we try and keep them in lower numbers, so you don't have to send a lot of your products out. And if it's very high ticket or something you really want to do, or you want to put a lot of stuff in one place, then we can arrange something else so you don't have to send tons of them. But that's something we can talk about on a call. Next is going to be content creation and revision. So this is where we're actually doing this. We have our creative director of each project actually overlook all this, and they are kind of like a success manager where they're managing the actual general storyboards, understanding the vision, making sure that everything is going well, communicating with the creators, overseeing the video content, the lines, the scenes, making sure everyone has good shots and cuts, managing the editing and video style, and also always providing a multitude of examples and inspiration to give people a clear objective of what they should be making with their videos. Lastly, once we get all of that sorted out, so once it's edited, we have good trends, good trendy music, we're following the right things, we're doing exactly what's going viral on these platforms. We coagulate all of it, we centralize all the data in one place, or I should say the content, and we make all the edits, everything like that. And so an organized file is returned to you. Creators are kept within the Adamant Media ecosystem. And I mentioned before, but we sort of pair, so we'll find creators that resonate really well with your audience and your brand. And we'll be able to kind of rely on them more heavily going forward, where audiences typically resonate better when they see faces and kind of get touch points from similarity. So we have brands that work with 5 to 10 creators pretty consistently, and we just continually help them script and build out new creatives and things like that. And we slowly expand as they continue to get more success and continue to look for more creatives on a monthly basis. So that's similar to what we'll do with just about everyone. And it works really well. And of course, it lets you not have to ship out as many products. You just have certain creators who just have them. But yeah, so definitely a great fit. That's more or less the overview. I also clicked on this because you'll typically see we'll kind of gather a large drive where we have tons of inspiration and things like this. It's just one of the smaller ones that are brought together, but this is typically how we'll do it. We'll get a bunch of inspiration, we'll bring everything together, we'll show you exactly what we're thinking, what's working on the platforms already, things like that, and that's how we start building them out. And then we'll, of course, gather our own, and that's what we're sending to you. And we do this on a monthly basis, so the first time around, it'll take more around 2 to 4 weeks. It's a bit harder to get in the mix of things and in the routine. You have to find the creators and understand the brand and take that deep dive. But once we have a better idea, it typically takes 1 to 2 weeks going forward, or we can just kind of have it on a rolling basis and get some consistent growth going. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let me know, and let me know if you want to see any more of these case study type things. We also have a page where you can see a lot of it that I can send you a link where we have a lot of case studies where we've done a combination of organic growth with content, as well as the content creation for ads and running the paid ads. So I'll send all that your way. And thanks for checking it out. And our clients track like considerably more data. Yeah, I mean, that's where we get 20, 30 times more data than the average person in the industry does. And lastly, if you have a programmer in-house, or if you know how to do it, or if you need us to do it, you can use first-party data and API tracking, which is something you can set up with each one of your ad platforms as well, which is extremely powerful when you're ready for it. The next pillar is going to be scalable content. Just move myself. So scalable content creation. The question I always give people who are and not sure if they're doing it well is, are you consistently creating more than 20 pieces of content per month? If you're not, and if the content's not performing well, then that's obviously its own problem because you're not making the good content each month. Is it fitted to your ideal audience? Does it exhibit multiple products, or are you just spamming one product? You put with one creator, you get a ton of pieces that are pretty much the same, and you just keep posting all those. Does it engage your community? Are you getting actual engagement? What are the conversions on it? Things like that. What kind of data are you tracking from the results of this and the performance of these creatives? And lastly, although this kind of summarizes all the other points, but is it replicable and recyclable? Like, can you do it again? Can you later use the content again? Here at our agency, we have a decently large network now. I mean, we have over 1,000 creators that we have kind of stored in our database. We understand their niche, we have their portfolios, they're vetted, we can constantly rely on them. And we have such a wide variety of niches now that whoever comes to us in e-commerce or in tech or something like that, we have creators who can make extremely valuable content for them. And we can use them for creatives, as in for the ads. We can use them for organic posting, and it just helps you guys in every direction. Now that can go on Instagram, TikTok, your ads, Facebook, wherever you need it. And it's so powerful. But the most powerful part is definitely the number. If you only have 1 or 2 a month, it's going to be really hard to do any real testing. But with this in place, we can get 15, 20, 30 pieces of content when we need. We can even go higher as we scale with everyone. Like our clients, we have some looking for 50 pieces of content a month. This is what allows it. We understand, we work with these people, we work with these creators, we know how to get them. So we have different hooks in the beginning. We can test different copy with it, so we can build out different videos. We know how to catch people's attention. We know the right call to actions, things like that. And we're comfortable working with them. But if it's something you need to do on your own, then so be it. But keep in mind that you should be able to consistently and predictably produce a decently large amount of content. So if you really wanted, you could post just about every day while having a number of creatives to use for paid ads. So the next thing, and the third pillar, the third and final pillar, is definitely the factor of just data-driven paid marketing strategies, which is sort of what encapsulates the first 2 pillars and puts them into place and allows the third pillar to be so effective. But at the end of the day, paid marketing is systematic and predictable when and if done correctly. You get reliable data, which is obviously in pillar 1, and you get high quality content, which is in pillar 2. And using that with an understanding of your avatar and your product market fit in general, you can use scalable strategies to very quickly ramp this up. It makes every single dollar you spend more effective and more informative because you're getting more data from it, but you're also using the right strategy to scale effectively. You're not spreading yourself on a million things. You're not trying a million things at once. You've already gotten your focus as a business. In doing that, you can have a much more organized funnel, like I exemplified here, as well as campaign structures in general, because you will be able to experimentally and systematically test these things because you've laid out the creatives, you've laid out the data, and you've laid out your campaigns in such a way that you can test any one thing, any one variable at any time you want, understanding if it's working or if it isn't, turn off what isn't, scale what is. And that's really all there is to it. I mean, it's these 3 pillars are what we see in the multiple 8-figure businesses we work with, the multiple 7-figure businesses. They have these at the heart, at the core of their systems are these 3 pillars. I mean, there's obviously other things that go hand in hand with this, like you can have email and SMS, you can have natural PR, you can have huge organic presence, and all these things. But most of those are dependent on these 3 pillars, because if you don't have data, you can't implement most of them. If you don't have content, you can't use half of them. If you don't have real strategies for your paid marketing, you're not going to reach enough people to drive into your ecosystem to get all those other results. You just won't be able to do those other things if you don't take care of these 3 pillars correctly. As I showed you earlier, we have some case studies. We have plenty of them showing that we know exactly what we're doing when it comes to this. So if this is something you're interested in exploring, then you're in the right place. Obviously, you can reach out to us. But like I said, unity drives growth. And realistically, no one pillar will succeed without another. You can get a ton of data, but if you're not plugging it into something, then it's not being used. You can get a bunch of content, but if you're not learning how to predictably make these things successful and understanding which ones are and which ones aren't successful, then you won't know what to use. And if you're not showing them to the right people, then you're making content for nothing and you're getting data for nothing because you're not delivering it to the right ideal audiences, which is exactly what you can do with paid traffic. There's just no other way than this combination of 3 pillars to properly leverage tracking data with extremely good content that converts and putting it in front of the exact ideal audiences at every stage of the funnel until they buy and after they buy. There's just no other way. At the end of the day, as I mentioned here, the biggest perks are you're going to get higher profitability margins because you'll be able to get a higher ROI on every dollar you're spending. You're going to get omnidirectional presence because you'll be able to expand onto multiple platforms as you get success and you find exactly where your audience is. It leaves you extremely flexible because being able to track more data will let you make decisions with more informed decisions, and you can make them faster. Lastly, you won't be dependent on any one platform because you never have to worry once you're omnidirectionally scaling. If Facebook goes down tomorrow or TikTok shuts down, you'll have other platforms that you can continue to scale those channels without having your business be crippled and losing all your purchases. And those combined, leave you always ready for new opportunities. There's things like Web3 coming up. There's a lot of new updates in the world of marketing in general. And if you don't even have these well established, you won't be able to step into new things because you won't be able to take huge risks. And it will feel like a risk because you won't have anything that makes these risks into opportunities. You'll just be constantly fighting to stay afloat, potentially scaling a little bit, but these kind of take care of that. So yeah, the last thing is, I assume you know the answer when you get this far into the presentation, but the question of when you should start, which I get a lot, is typically, when should you start? When should I get involved? Should I wait for this to happen? I have a bell curve on mine. Should I wait for sales to go up? And honestly, my answer is always, even if it wasn't with us, digital marketing is constantly changing. You can see that from the explosion of TikTok, all the changes in ads, the constant updates, and all the new regulations. Digital marketing is constantly changing, and without a doubt, the best time to start is always now. At the very least, you can start aggregating data. You can start figuring out exactly where your audience exists, exactly what they want to see, and how to start scaling, so you're always prepared for another update. If you have any questions, or you're looking just to get more involved and hop right on a call, you can message me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. I'm on all of them. Or you can email me right here, and it'll go right to me, and I'll be sure to answer you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And like I said, if you have any questions, send them my way. Otherwise, thanks for checking it out. Have a good one.